They're coming. Hide the babies. Those were the first words Kazuo Rinnan ever said to Zara Milton, gasped out between ragged breaths as he collapsed in the shipping container, blood pouring from his side. Zara had been a delivery driver for exactly 8 months. Before that, a paramedic dropout. Before that, a daughter who watched her parents burn. Now she was standing in an abandoned shipyard at midnight, staring at a dying stranger and 2 screaming infants, while headlights cut through the rain outside. "Who's coming?" she whispered. "People who want me dead." He coughed, blood on his lips. "People who want my children. Please hide them. I'll distract. You'll bleed out in 3 minutes if I don't stop this." Zara was already moving, her old training kicking in. She pressed her jacket against his wound, feeling warm blood soak through. How many people? At least 3. Maybe more. His eyes met hers, dark and desperate. "Take Mika and Ren. Run. I'm dead anyway. Nobody's dying tonight." Zara looked at the babies, then at the dying man, then at the approaching headlights. She had about 30 seconds to make a choice that would either save 3 lives or end all of them. "Can you hold pressure on this wound?" He nodded weakly. "Then do it." She grabbed the baby carriers with one hand, her other hand already pulling out her phone. "We're all getting out of here. But I need you conscious and moving in 10 seconds. Can you do that?" "Who are you?" "Someone who's really bad at walking away from problems." Zara hauled him to his feet as the car doors slammed outside. "Now move. My van's 50 yards that way, and we're about to find out if I remember how to do this." "Do what?" "Save lives while people are trying to end them." She had no idea that in 12 hours, she'd be pulling a bullet out of this man in her apartment. That in 12 days, she'd be raising his children. That in 12 months, she'd be the only thing standing between him and the people who wanted his family destroyed. All she knew was that she couldn't walk away. Not from the babies crying. Not from the man dying. Not from the choice that would change everything. Before you find out what Zara discovers, hit that like button if you're already hooked. And drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from viewers all around the world. Now back to the story. Zara grabbed her phone and pulled up the delivery app. The customer name was listed as Kazuo Rinnan with a note that said, "Leave at South Entrance. Do not knock. Payment on delivery." The South Entrance. She looked around. Everything looked like a South Entrance when you were surrounded by industrial buildings with no clear markings. She should leave. She should mark the delivery as undeliverable and head home. But $200 was $200, and the app had already charged the customer. If she didn't at least try to deliver it, she wouldn't get paid, and she was already 3 weeks behind on rent. Zara pulled her hood up, grabbed the insulated delivery bag from the back, and stepped out into the storm. The wind immediately tried to rip the door from her hands. Rain soaked through her jeans in seconds. She clutched the bag to her chest and hurried toward the warehouse, her sneakers splashing through puddles that were ankle deep. The south entrance turned out to be a rolling metal door that was pulled halfway down, revealing a dark interior that smelled like rust and seawater. Zara crouched down and peered inside, pulling out her phone to use as a flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating concrete floors, old shipping crates, and absolutely nothing that looked like a restaurant kitchen. "Hello." Her voice echoed back at her. "Delivery for Kazuo Rinnan?" Nothing. Just the sound of rain hammering on the metal roof and the distant rumble of thunder. She should definitely leave now. This was exactly the kind of situation her parents had warned her about before they died. Don't go into dark places alone. Don't trust weird delivery requests. Use your head, Zara. But then she heard it. Faint, almost lost in the storm but unmistakable. A baby crying. No, 2 babies crying. The sound was coming from somewhere beyond the warehouse, carried on the wind. Zara's blood went cold. Every rational thought told her to run, to get back in her van and call the police and let them handle whatever this was. But her feet were already moving, carrying her around the side of the warehouse, following the sound. Because babies didn't cry in abandoned warehouses at midnight for no reason. Because someone might need help. Because 3 years of paramedic training had hardwired her to respond to distress calls, even when she wasn't on duty, even when she hadn't been on duty for 2 years. The crying was louder now, more desperate. It was coming from behind the warehouse, where a maze of shipping containers created a sort of industrial alleyway. Her phone's flashlight beam swept across graffiti-covered metal walls, puddles, and piles of discarded pallets. And then it landed on something that made her stop dead in her tracks. An SUV. Black, expensive-looking, with armored plating visible where the front end had been smashed into one of the shipping containers. The driver's side door hung open, and the interior light was on, revealing shattered glass, deployed airbags, and what looked like bullet holes stitched across the hood and windshield. The babies were still crying. The sound was coming from inside one of the containers just beyond the wrecked SUV. Zara's hands were shaking as she moved closer, her phone light dancing across the scene. Blood. There was blood on the ground, leading from the SUV toward a rusted shipping container with its door partially open. "Hello." Her voice cracked. "Is anyone there? Do you need help?" A sound from inside the container. Movement. Then a voice, male with an accent she couldn't quite place. "Stay back." The tone was sharp, dangerous, but also weak. Whoever was in there was hurt. Zara knew that tone. She'd heard it 100 times during her clinical rotations. The voice of someone trying to sound threatening when they were really just terrified and in pain. "I'm not going to hurt you," Zara called out, taking another step closer. "I heard babies crying. Are they okay? Are you okay?" I said stay back. The voice was louder now, more desperate. There was a clicking sound that Zara recognized immediately. A gun being cocked. "Leave now, or I will shoot you." And then no one helps anyone. The baby's cries intensified, and something in Zara's chest tightened. She thought about walking away. She really did. But then she thought about her parents, trapped in that burning building 2 years ago, and how the firefighters had run toward the flames anyway because that's what you do when people need help. You don't walk away. You can't. "I was a paramedic," Zara said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "Well, almost. I dropped out, but I know how to help. And those babies sound scared. Please just let me see if everyone's okay." Silence. Just the rain and the crying and the hammering of Zara's own heartbeat in her ears. Then, finally, "You come alone?" "Yes. I'm a delivery driver. I was just trying to drop off food. And I heard the babies. That's all. I'm alone, I promise." More silence. Then, "No police. You bring police, they will die. You understand? They will take my children." Children. The babies were his. Zara felt a wave of something, relief maybe, or maybe just more fear. She couldn't tell anymore. "No police," she agreed. "I promise. Just let me help." Another long pause. Then the sound of something heavy being moved, and the container door scraped open a few more inches. Zara moved forward slowly, her phone light raised. The beam fell on 2 infant carriers first, tucked against the far wall of the container, covered with what looked like expensive coats. The babies inside were red-faced and screaming, but they looked unharmed. Then the light moved to the man. He was slumped against the wall of the container, one hand pressed to his side where blood was soaking through a white dress shirt. The other hand held a gun, pointed directly at Zara, but his grip was weak and his hand was shaking. He looked like he was in his early 30s, Japanese, with sharp features and dark hair that was plastered to his face with rain and sweat. He wore what had once been an expensive suit, now torn and blood-stained. His eyes were glassy with pain and shock, but there was something fierce in them too. Something protective and desperate. Are you still watching? If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. And seriously, drop a comment with your location. We're building a global community here. "You need a hospital," Zara said, lowering her phone slightly so she wasn't shining it directly in his eyes. "That's a gunshot wound. You're going to bleed out if you don't get help. No hospital." His accent was distinctly Japanese, clipped and precise even through the pain. "They will find me. They will take my children. I die here before I let that happen." "Who's they?" Zara asked, but the man just shook his head. One of the babies let out a particularly sharp cry, and his face crumpled with anguish. The gun lowered slightly. "Please," he whispered. "I try to feed them. I try to keep them warm. But I cannot move anymore. I think I am dying. If I die, they die too. No one knows we are here." Zara felt something shift inside her. It was the same feeling she'd gotten during her first night shift in the emergency room, when a trauma patient had been rushed in, and she'd had to choose between freezing up or stepping forward. She'd stepped forward then. And she stepped forward now. "Put the gun down," she said softly. "I'm going to help you, but I need both hands free, and I need you to not accidentally shoot me. Can you do that?" The man stared at her for a long moment, and Zara could see him doing the calculation. Trust or die. Finally, slowly, he set the gun down on the floor of the container, far enough away that Zara could kick it aside when she entered. She did exactly that, sending it skittering into a corner, and then she was on her knees beside him, her delivery forgotten, her shift forgotten, everything forgotten except the immediate problem in front of her. "I'm Zara," she said, already pulling his hand away from the wound to assess the damage. The bleeding was bad but not arterial. Entry wound in his left side. No exit wound visible. The bullet was still in there. "What's your name?" "Kazuo." His voice was getting weaker. "Kazuo Rinnan. Those are my children. Mika and Ran. They are 3 months old. If I die, please, you must protect them. Do not let them be found." Rinnan. The name triggered something in Zara's memory. She'd heard it before. Whispered in the dockyard district. Mentioned in news reports about shipping companies and mysterious business dealings. Rinnan Industries. Import-export. Connections to things that weren't quite legal and weren't quite illegal. The kind of name that made longshoremen nervous and cops interested. "You're not going to die," Zara said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "But I need to get you out of here. I need supplies, I need light, I need space to work. My apartment is about 20 minutes away. Can you walk if I help you?" Kazuo's head rolled back against the container wall. "I walked here. From the car. With my children. I walked here to hide them. But now I cannot walk anymore." "Yes, you can," Zara said firmly. She grabbed one of the coats that had been covering the baby carriers and pressed it against his wound. "You're going to stand up and you're going to lean on me and you're going to get to my van. And then we're going to get your babies safe. Okay, that's all you have to think about. Just getting to the van." She didn't know where this confidence was coming from. She'd spent the last 2 years feeling like a failure, a dropout, someone who couldn't handle the pressure when it mattered. But right now, with this stranger bleeding out and 2 babies crying and a storm raging outside, she felt like the person she used to be. The person she thought she'd lost when her parents died. It took 10 minutes to get Kazuo on his feet and another 5 to half carry, half drag him to the van. He was heavy, and the rain made everything slippery, and twice he nearly collapsed and took them both down. But somehow they made it. Zara got him into the back of the van, lying on his side with the coat still pressed to his wound. Then she ran back for the babies. Mika and Ren had quieted down slightly, probably exhausted from crying. Up close, Zara could see they were beautiful. Identical features that must have come from their mother. Delicate noses, perfectly shaped mouths, skin that was a shade lighter than their father's. Both were dressed in expensive-looking onesies that were now damp from the rain. Both stared up at Zara with dark, serious eyes that seemed far too aware for 3-month-olds. "Hi there," Zara whispered, unbuckling the carriers. "I'm Zara. I'm going to keep you safe. I promise." She loaded them into the van's passenger seat, securing the carriers with seatbelts. By the time she climbed into the driver's seat, she was soaking wet, shaking from cold and adrenaline, and had no idea what she was doing. But she put the van in gear anyway and pulled out of the warehouse parking lot, heading toward her apartment on the other side of the city. Kazuo was silent in the back. Zara kept checking the rearview mirror to make sure he was still breathing. The babies had finally stopped crying, lulled by the motion of the van. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the vehicle, there was a strange sense of calm. Like they were in a bubble, separate from the rest of the world. "Why did you help me?" Kazuo's voice was so quiet Zara almost didn't hear it over the rain. "I don't know," she admitted. "Because you needed help. Because your kids needed help. Because I couldn't walk away. Most people walk away." "Yeah, well, I'm not most people." Zara took a left turn, heading into a slightly better neighborhood. "And you're going to have to tell me what happened. Who shot you? Who's looking for you? What am I getting myself into? It is better you do not know. Too late for that. I've already got a bleeding crime lord and 2 babies in my van. I'm pretty involved at this point. Kazuo made a sound that might have been a laugh if he'd had the strength for it. Crime lord. That is not what I am. I am a businessman. I import goods. I employ people. But my late wife, she came from a family that wanted different things for me. Different things for our children. Late wife. The babies had lost their mother. Zara's chest tightened. What kind of different things? Control. Power. They believed I would be easy to manipulate after Sayuri died. They believed I would let them raise my children, teach them their ways. When I refused, when I tried to leave the city with Mika and Ren, they decided it would be easier if I was dead. Then they could claim the children. Claim my business. Claim everything. Zara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They shot you because you wouldn't give up your kids? They shot me because they think I am weak. Because I chose fatherhood over empire. Because I would rather deliver my own children to safety than send soldiers to do it. His voice was fading. I was driving to the airport. Private plane. But they found me. Shot out my tires. I crashed. I took my children and I ran. I hid them. I thought if I could just survive until dawn I could call for help. But then you appeared. Zara pulled up to a red light and turned around to look at him. Stay with me, okay? We're almost there. 5 more minutes. Kazuo's eyes were closed, but he nodded slightly. 5 minutes. I can do 5 minutes. If you're wondering whether they make it, stick around. And don't forget to like this video if you're invested in what happens next. Let's get to 10,000 likes on this one, guys. You can do it. Zara's apartment building was a 4-story walk-up in a neighborhood that was trying to gentrify but hadn't quite made it yet. The kind of place where people minded their own business and didn't ask questions about strangers showing up at midnight. Zara had lived there for 18 months, ever since she dropped out of school and needed cheap rent. It wasn't much. A converted attic studio with slanted ceilings and a bathroom she shared with the artist who lived in the unit below. But it was hers. Getting Kazuo up 4 flights of stairs was a nightmare. He'd lost more blood than Zara had realized, and by the 3rd floor he could barely move his legs. She ended up dragging him the last flight, her muscles screaming, both of them breathing hard. The babies amazingly stayed quiet in their carriers. It was like they understood that silence was survival right now. Zara's apartment was freezing when they stumbled inside. The heater had been broken for 3 weeks, and her landlord kept promising to fix it but never did. She got Kazuo onto her bed, which was really just a mattress on the floor in the corner, and then she ran around pulling down every blanket and towel she owned. The babies got settled on her small couch, still in their carriers, wrapped in her winter coat. Okay, Zara said, more to herself than to Kazuo. Okay, I can do this. She pulled out the plastic storage container from under her bed. Inside was everything she hadn't been able to throw away when she dropped out. Trauma shears, gauze, tape, a blood pressure cuff, a stethoscope. For supplies she'd borrowed from the hospital, even a suture kit. She'd kept it all, telling herself it was just too expensive to waste, but really she'd kept it because throwing it away felt like admitting she'd failed. Now she was grateful for her inability to let go. Kazuo was drifting in and out of consciousness. Zara cut away his shirt and assessed the wound properly for the first time. Entry wound in the left side, about 4 inches below his rib cage. The bullet had missed major organs, she was pretty sure, but it had done damage. She could see muscle tissue, and the bleeding, while not arterial, was steady. He needed surgery. He needed a hospital. But he also needed to not be found, and Zara had made a promise. This is going to hurt, she warned him. I need to clean the wound and I need to see if the bullet's still in there. Do you understand? Kazuo's eyes opened. He looked directly at her and said in a voice that was surprisingly clear, do not stop. No matter what I say, no matter what sounds I make, do not stop. My children need me alive. You understand? Zara nodded. She grabbed a bottle of vodka from her kitchen shelf, the good stuff she'd been saving for a celebration that never came, and used it to sterilize her hands and her instruments. Then she poured some directly into the wound. Kazuo's back arched off the mattress. A sound came out of him that wasn't quite a scream but wasn't far off. Zara held him down with one hand and kept working with the other. She probed the wound with forceps, feeling for the bullet. It took 3 tries but she found it, lodged against his lower rib. Removing it was delicate work. She had to cut slightly to widen the wound opening, And Kazuo's body went rigid with pain, but she kept going. Because he'd told her not to stop. Because those babies on the couch needed their father. The bullet came out with a wet sucking sound. Zara dropped it into a bowl, and immediately started packing the wound with gauze. The bleeding increased for a moment, and her heart stuttered. With panic, but then it started to slow. She applied pressure, counting seconds in her head, remembering her training. After 2 minutes, the bleeding had reduced to a sluggish ooze. She flushed the wound again with vodka, making Kazuo gasp and shudder, and then she started suturing. Her hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to thread the needle. But once she started, muscle memory took over. Her instructors had always said she had good hands, steady and precise. She'd forgotten that about herself. She'd forgotten she'd ever been good at anything. The suturing took 20 minutes. By the time Zara tied off the final knot, her hands were cramping and Kazuo had passed out, probably from a combination of pain and blood loss. She checked his pulse, his breathing, his pupils. All things considered, he was doing okay. Better than okay. He might actually survive this. She covered him with blankets and then turned her attention to the babies. Mika and Ren were awake, staring at her with those unsettling dark eyes. Neither was crying, which seemed wrong. 3-month-olds should cry. They should fuss. But these two just watched her, silent and serious. "Hey there," Zara said softly, kneeling in front of the couch. "You guys must be hungry, and probably need changing. Let me see what I can do." She found supplies in the diaper bag that had been strapped to one of the carriers. Diapers, wipes, 2 bottles of formula already mixed, extra clothes. Everything a parent would grab in an emergency. Zara warmed the bottles in a pot of hot water on her hot plate, and then carefully lifted Mika out of her carrier. The baby was lighter than she'd expected, delicate but solid. She settled into Zara's arms like she belonged there. Feeding Mika was easier than Zara expected. The baby latched onto the bottle immediately and drank with focused intensity. Ren was more difficult. He kept turning his head away from the bottle, fussing, his little face scrunching up. But eventually he took it, and Zara sat on the floor of her tiny apartment, a baby in each arm, and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. The clock on her phone read 2:37 a.m. The storm was still raging outside, rain hammering against the windows. In the corner, Kazuo was breathing steadily, his face pale but peaceful in unconsciousness. The babies finished their bottles and started to drift off, their small bodies relaxing against Zara's chest. This was insane. She should call the police. She should call an ambulance. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the fear in Kazuo's voice when he'd talked about his children being taken. Maybe it was the way these babies had looked at her, like they knew she was their only hope. Or maybe it was just that Zara was so tired of feeling useless, of feeling like a failure, and this was the first time in 2 years she'd felt like she mattered. She was putting Rin back in his carrier when she heard it. A car engine outside slowing down. Not unusual for this neighborhood, but something about it made Zara freeze. The engine idled for a moment, then cut off. Car doors opened. Closed softly. Too softly. Zara's heart started hammering. She moved to the window and peered through the gap in the curtains. Down on the street, barely visible in the rain and darkness, were 3 figures. Men, she thought, though it was hard to tell. They were looking up at the building and one was pointing at her window. "No," Zara whispered. "No, no, no." Behind her, Kazuo stirred. "They found me," he rasped. "I thought we had time. I thought the storm would hide us. But they found me. Want to know if they escape? Keep watching. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We're posting stories like this every single day. Don't miss out." Zara spun around to look at Kazuo. He was trying to sit up, his face contorted with pain and effort. "How?" she demanded. "How did they find you? They have resources. Cameras. Connections. Or perhaps they simply followed the blood trail I must have left." He managed to get himself into a sitting position, one hand pressed to his sutured wound. "You must go. Take my children and run. Out the back. Down the fire escape. I will deal with them. You can barely sit up. You're not dealing with anyone. I am their father. This is my responsibility. And I'm the idiot who dragged you up 4 flights of stairs, so it's my responsibility to now. Zara was already moving, grabbing the baby carriers, checking to make sure Mika and Ren were secure. Can you walk? I do not think so. Then you're about to learn. She grabbed his arm and hauled him to his feet, ignoring his grunt of pain. Back door. Fire escape. Move. Her apartment had 2 exits. The main door that led to the hallway and a back door that opened onto a rusted metal fire escape she'd never actually tested. She prayed it would hold their weight as she shoved the door open and ushered Kazuo through. The rain immediately soaked them both. The fire escape groaned ominously. Zara grabbed both baby carriers in one hand and used the other to support Kazuo. They made it down 1 flight, then 2. Behind them, she could hear sounds from her apartment. The front door being forced open. Voices speaking in rapid Japanese. Footsteps. Faster, Kazuo gasped. They are coming. I'm going as fast as I can with 2 babies and a gunshot victim. Zara's feet slipped on the wet metal. She caught herself on the railing, her heart in her throat. 3 stories down. The fall would kill them all. They reached the 3rd floor landing just as a head appeared in her apartment's back doorway above them. Zara didn't see a face, just a silhouette and the gleam of something metal. She grabbed Kazuo and threw both of them against the wall just as the sound of a gunshot cracked through the storm. The bullet sparked off the railing where they'd just been standing. Go, go, go. Zara shoved Kazuo toward the next flight of stairs. Her mind was racing. They couldn't outrun these people. Kazuo could barely walk. But maybe they could outsmart them. Maybe they could hide. The 2nd floor landing. The 1st floor. Finally, blessedly, the ground. Zara's legs were shaking from the adrenaline and the strain of supporting Kazuo. The babies were miraculously still quiet, but she could see their eyes were open, reflecting what little light filtered through the storm. My van, she panted. If we can get to my van. No. Kazuo grabbed her arm with surprising strength. They will have disabled it. Or have people watching it. We cannot use vehicles. We must disappear. Disappear where? This is Philadelphia, not some spy movie. We can't just vanish. Kazuo looked at her, and even through his pain, she could see the calculation in his eyes. The same calculation she'd seen in the shipping container. Trust or die. Do you know this neighborhood? I've lived here for 18 months. Then you know places. Hidden places. Where someone could hide. It wasn't a question. Zara thought fast. The neighborhood was mostly residential, with a few scattered businesses. There was a corner store that closed at midnight, a laundromat, a church that was usually locked, and the old fire lookout tower. She discovered it during one of her long, aimless walks after her parents died. It was a historical building, supposedly maintained by the city, but actually just abandoned and forgotten. She'd broken in a few times, back when she couldn't stand being in her apartment alone with her thoughts. It was 3 blocks away. I know a place, she said. But you're not going to like it. I do not need to like it. I need my children to be safe. They ran. Well, Zara ran and Kazuo stumbled beside her, leaning heavily on her shoulder. The storm worked in their favor, keeping people indoors, reducing visibility. But it also made every step treacherous. They cut through an alley, then across a parking lot, then down a side street Zara knew had no cameras. Behind them she could hear shouts. The sound of more than one person running. The fire lookout tower loomed out of the darkness like something from a nightmare. It was a 4-story brick structure with a metal observation platform on top, built sometime in the early 1900s when cities actually used such things. Now it was just a forgotten piece of history, surrounded by a chain-link fence that had more holes than links. Zara had memorized the way in months ago. There was a gap in the fence on the east side, hidden by overgrown bushes. She led Kazuo through it, branches tearing at their clothes, and then to the tower's service door. The lock had been broken for years. She shouldered it open and they stumbled inside. The interior was pitch black and smelled like mold and pigeon droppings. Zara pulled out her phone and used it to light the way up a narrow spiral staircase. 1 flight. 2 flights. Kazuo was flagging badly. By the 3rd flight, he was leaning so heavily on Zara she could barely support him. But they kept going. Because the men chasing them would check the ground floor first. Height was their only advantage. They made it to the observation platform just as Kazuo's legs gave out completely. He collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. his sutured wound seeping blood through his shirt. Zara set the baby carriers down and immediately went to check on him. His pulse was rapid and thready. He was going into shock. "Stay with me," she ordered, cupping his face in her hands. "Kazuo, look at me. Stay awake." His eyes focused on her with obvious effort. "Mika and Ran. Are they safe?" Zara glanced at the carriers. Both babies were still quiet, still staring with those dark eyes. "They're safe. Everyone's safe. Just focus on staying conscious." Below them she could hear voices. The men had followed them. Of course they had. She and Kazuo had left a blood trail through the rain. Zara moved to the observation platform's edge and looked down carefully. 3 men in dark rain gear were examining the tower's entrance. One was speaking into a phone. Another was pointing up at the tower. They knew exactly where their targets had gone. Zara looked around desperately for something, anything that could help them. The observation platform was empty except for some old wooden benches and a lot of pigeon nests. No weapons. No escape route except the stairs they'd come up. They were trapped. "In my pocket," Kazuo whispered. "Left pocket. Take it." Zara reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a phone. Not a regular phone, something heavier, more rugged. Military grade, maybe. "What do I do with this?" "Press the red button. Hold it for 3 seconds. Help will come." "What kind of help?" "The kind that asks no questions." His eyes were starting to drift closed. "Press it. Please. I cannot lose my children. I cannot." His voice trailed off. Zara checked his pulse again. Still there, but weaker. He was fading fast. And below, she could hear footsteps on the spiral stairs. The men were coming up. She looked at the phone in her hand. At Kazuo barely conscious. At Mika and Ran silent in their carriers. And she pressed the red button. Nothing happened. No sound, no light, nothing. Just a faint vibration that lasted exactly 3 seconds, and then the phone went dark. "Okay, let me know if you're still watching by dropping a like right now. And seriously, comment your location. We're trying to see how far this story reaches. Now let's see what happens next." The footsteps were getting closer. Zara could hear them clearly now, echoing in the spiral staircase. She did a quick inventory of their situation. 1 dying man, 2 babies, herself with no combat training whatsoever, and 3 armed men who wanted them dead. The odds were not good. But she was not going down without a fight. Zara grabbed one of the old wooden benches and dragged it to the top of the staircase. It wasn't much of a barricade, but it was something. Then she looked around for anything else that could be used as a weapon. A broken piece of railing. Some loose bricks from where the observation platform's wall was crumbling. She gathered everything within reach and piled it near the stairs. "Zara." Kazuo's voice was barely a whisper. "If I die and they take my children, do not try to fight them. Let them go. Save yourself. Nobody's dying and nobody's taking anyone." Zara surprised herself with how fierce she sounded. 2 years of feeling worthless, of feeling like a quitter, and now when it actually mattered, she found she had fight left in her after all. "I didn't patch you up just so you could give up now." The first man appeared at the top of the stairs. He was young, maybe mid-20s Asian, with a cold professional look that said this wasn't his first time hunting someone. He saw Zara standing there with a brick in her hand and actually smiled. Like this was funny. Like she was a joke. "Step aside," he said in English with barely any accent. "This doesn't concern you. Give us Rinnan and the children, and you can walk away." "No." The man's smile widened. "You're brave. Stupid but brave. Do you know who you're protecting? Do you know what he's done? The lives he's ruined. I know he's a father protecting his children. That's all I need to know." The man sighed like Zara was being unreasonable. He pulled a gun from inside his jacket, moving slowly, deliberately, showing her exactly what she was up against. "Last chance. Move or I move you." Zara's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. But she didn't move. She couldn't. Because behind her were 2 babies who had already lost their mother, and a man who had fought through a gunshot wound to keep them safe. And if she stepped aside now, what was the point of any of it? What was the point of saving Kazuo if she just handed him over to be killed? The man raised his gun and Zara threw the brick. She'd never thrown anything with the intent to hurt someone before. But 2 years of rage and grief and frustration went into that throw. The brick flew straight and true, catching the man in the shoulder just as he was taking aim. He stumbled backward with a shout, his gun firing wild, the bullet sparking off the metal ceiling. Zara didn't wait. She grabbed another brick and threw it. Then another. The man tried to dodge, but the narrow stairwell gave him nowhere to go. He retreated down a few steps, cursing in Japanese, blood streaming from where one of the bricks had opened a cut above his eye. But then the second man appeared behind him, and this one didn't bother with warnings or negotiations. He just raised his gun and fired. The bullet missed Zara by inches, so close she felt the air displacement. She dropped to the ground behind her makeshift barricade, her ears ringing from the gunshot in the enclosed space. Another shot. Another. Wood splintered. Brick chips flew. Zara covered her head with her arms and tried to make herself as small as possible. Stop! The first man's voice, sharp with authority. Stop shooting, you idiot. The children. The gunfire ceased. Zara risked a glance over the barricade. Both men had retreated partway down the stairs. They were arguing in rapid Japanese, gesturing angrily. She couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. They needed Mika and Rin alive and unharmed, which meant they couldn't just spray bullets everywhere. It was a weakness. A small one, but a weakness nonetheless. Zara. Kazuo had somehow dragged himself closer. His face was gray with pain and blood loss, but his eyes were focused. The platform. The east side. There is a maintenance ladder. Very old. Dangerous. But it goes down. Zara looked where he was indicating. Sure enough, partially hidden behind some old equipment, she could see the top rungs of a metal ladder bolted to the outside of the tower. It was rusted and looked like it might fall apart if you breathed on it too hard, but it was a way out. I can't climb down with both babies and help you, Zara said. It's impossible. Then you take my children and go. I will stay here. I will distract them. You can barely sit up. I can hold a gun. He pulled something from his other pocket. The gun from the shipping container, the one Zara had kicked aside and forgotten about. He must have grabbed it before they fled her apartment. I can buy you time. No. Zara looked at Mika and Ran, still silent in their carriers, and made a decision that was probably insane but felt right. We all go or none of us go. That's the deal. She didn't give Kazuo time to argue. She grabbed both baby carriers in one arm, slung them over her shoulder like the world's most precious handbag, and used her other arm to haul Kazuo to his feet. He made a sound of protest, but she ignored it. They stumbled toward the ladder together. The men on the stairs realized what was happening. Zara heard shouts, footsteps rushing up. She got Kazuo to the ladder and practically shoved him onto it. Climb. Now. I cannot. You're going to climb because if you don't, we all die here. Zara's voice had that same sharp authority her instructors had used in the emergency room. The voice that didn't accept arguments. One rung at a time. That's all you have to do. One rung. Kazuo grabbed the ladder and started down. Zara went next, the baby carriers banging against her hip, throwing off her balance. The ladder shook with their combined weight. Below, the ground was lost in darkness and rain. She tried not to think about what would happen if the ladder gave way. A head appeared at the top of the tower. The first man, the one she'd hit with the brick. He saw them on the ladder and started to climb over the edge after them. But then Kazuo did something Zara didn't expect. With one hand still gripping the ladder, he raised his gun and fired. The shot went wide. Kazuo was too weak and in too much pain to aim properly, but it was enough to make the man duck back. Kazuo fired again. And again. 3 shots, each one echoing through the storm, each one buying them a few more seconds. They were halfway down when Zara felt the ladder shudder. Not from their weight this time, from structural failure. One of the bolts holding it to the wall had pulled free. The entire structure shifted outward, away from the tower, and suddenly they were hanging over empty space with nothing but rusted metal and prayers holding them up. Don't stop! Zara yelled over the wind and rain. Keep moving. Kazuo was slowing down. Each rung was taking him longer. His injured side was seeping blood again, leaving a trail on the ladder. But he kept going. One rung. Another. Another. They were 20 feet from the ground when the men appeared at the top of the tower again. This time they didn't try to follow. They just leaned over the edge and aimed their guns down at the ladder. Kazuo, Zara, the babies. Zara saw it happening in slow motion. Saw the guns rise. Saw fingers tighten on triggers. She pressed herself against the ladder, trying to shield the baby carriers with her body, and waited for the bullets. They never came. Instead, there was a sound like thunder but sharper, more mechanical. Helicopter rotors. A spotlight blazed to life, turning night into day, and Zara looked up to see a black helicopter descending through the storm. It was military-grade, unmarked, and it was coming down fast. The men at the top of the tower scattered. The helicopter hovered beside the tower, and Zara could see figures in tactical gear inside. One of them was gesturing urgently at her and Kazuo. Then a voice came through a loudspeaker, barely audible over the rotors and storm. "Hold position. Do not move." A figure rappelled out of the helicopter, dropping to the ground in seconds. Then another. And another. 3 people in black tactical gear, moving with military precision. They secured the base of the ladder. And one of them started climbing up toward Zara and Kazuo. "Mr. Rinnan." The climber was a woman, her voice calm and professional. "We're here to extract you. Can you continue down?" "Who?" Zara started to ask, but Kazuo cut her off. "They are mine. My people. I told you help would come." The tactical team got them down in minutes. As soon as Zara's feet hit the ground, someone took the baby carriers from her, and she wanted to protest, wanted to fight, but her arms were shaking so badly she could barely hold on anymore. Another team member caught Kazuo as he finally lost consciousness and collapsed off the ladder. "Medical, we need immediate attention on Mr. Rinnan," the woman who'd climbed the ladder said into her radio. Then she turned to Zara. "Ma'am, are you injured?" "No, I'm fine. The babies are being checked now. They appear unharmed." The woman studied Zara with sharp eyes. "You're the one who pulled the bullet out?" "Ah, yes. How did you?" "Field sutures, improvised equipment, vodka for antiseptic. I can smell it from here." Something that might have been respect crossed the woman's face. "Good work. You kept him alive." Above them, the helicopter had moved to the top of the tower. Zara could hear shouts, the sound of a brief struggle, and then silence. The 3 men who had hunted them were being extracted. Or eliminated. Zara wasn't sure she wanted to know which. A medical team had appeared from somewhere. 2 men in tactical gear with full field kits. They loaded Kazuo onto a stretcher and started working on him immediately. One hooked up in 4 while the other cut away Zara's sutures to assess the wound properly. She wanted to be offended, but she was too exhausted to care. "The children," Kazuo gasped, conscious again, fighting the medics. "Where are my children?" "Right here, sir." One of the team members brought over the carriers. Mika and Ren were awake, and for the first time all night, they looked like normal babies, fussy, scared, starting to cry. Kazuo reached out with shaking hands to touch them, to reassure himself they were real. "If you're still here, you're a real one. Make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We post daily, and you don't want to miss what comes next in this series. Comment below with your location too." The tactical team leader approached Zara. Up close, she could see the woman was in her 40s, Asian, with scars on her hands that spoke of experience. "Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions. Starting with your name." "Zara. Zara Milton." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears, like she was listening to someone else speak. "I'm just a delivery driver. I was just trying to drop off food, and I heard babies crying and She stopped. The whole night suddenly felt surreal. "What happens now?" "Now we secure the area, extract Mr. Rinnan and his children to a safe location, and make sure there are no more threats." The woman paused. "You saved his life tonight. That puts you in a complicated position." "Complicated how?" "The people who attacked Mr. Rinnan will know you helped him. They saw your face. They know where you live." The woman's expression was neutral, but Zara could read between the lines. She was in danger. Real danger. "So what are you saying? That I need to disappear? Get into witness protection or something?" "I'm saying that Mr. Rinnan takes care of the people who help him. And I'm saying you have a choice to make." The woman glanced at Kazuo, who was being loaded into a second helicopter that had landed nearby. You can go home, try to go back to your normal life, and hope they don't find you. Or you can come with us. Let us protect you until this situation is resolved. Zara looked at her apartment building in the distance. Her tiny studio with its broken heater and shared bathroom. Her delivery job that barely paid rent. Her life that had been on hold for 2 years, ever since her parents died and she'd given up on becoming a paramedic. Then she looked at Kazuo being lifted into the helicopter, at Mika and Ran in their carriers, at the tactical team moving with purpose and efficiency. She thought about how alive she'd felt tonight. How capable. How much it had mattered that she'd been there, that she'd made the choice to help instead of walking away. I'll come with you, she said. The woman nodded like this was what she'd expected. Good. We leave in 2 minutes. Grab anything you need. Zara almost laughed. Everything she needed was already in the helicopter. But she ran back to her building anyway, up those 4 flights of stairs one last time. Her apartment was trashed from the break-in. They'd torn through her belongings looking for Kazuo. She grabbed her parents' photo from the wreckage, the one thing she couldn't leave behind, and then she was running back down. The helicopter lifted off just as police sirens started wailing in the distance. Someone must have finally called 911 about all the gunshots. But by the time the police arrived, there would be nothing to find except an abandoned fire tower and some confused witnesses who thought they saw helicopters in the storm. Zara strapped herself into a seat next to the baby carriers. Across from her, the medics were still working on Kazuo. His eyes were closed, but she could see his chest rising and falling steadily. He was going to make it. They were all going to make it. One of the medics caught her looking and gave her a thumbs up. Then he mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Zara nodded. She was too overwhelmed to speak. The helicopter banked hard, heading northeast, away from the city. Below, Philadelphia disappeared into the storm. Zara pressed her parents' photo to her chest and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The fear, the adrenaline, the exhaustion, the strange sense of purpose. She'd spent 2 years thinking she was a failure. Thinking she'd given up on the only thing she was good at. But tonight she'd remembered something important. She hadn't become a paramedic because she wanted to work in a hospital. She'd become a paramedic because she wanted to save lives. And tonight she'd saved 3 of them. The helicopter flight took 40 minutes. They landed on the roof of what looked like a private medical facility somewhere outside the city. Kazuo was rushed inside immediately, surrounded by doctors and nurses. The babies went with him and Zara tried to follow, but the tactical team leader stopped her. Let the medical team work. You did your part. The woman guided her to an elevator. We have rooms prepared. You can shower, eat, rest. Mr. Rinnan will want to speak with you when he's stable. I want to make sure the babies are okay. They're being examined now. I promise you they're receiving the best care possible. The elevator doors opened on a floor that looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. This way. The room they gave Zara was bigger than her entire apartment. Private bathroom, king-size bed, windows that looked out over dark forest. Someone had left clothes in her size on the bed. Jeans, a sweater, underwear still in the package. There was also a tray of food. Soup, bread, fruit, tea. Zara stood in the middle of the room for a long moment, trying to process everything. 12 hours ago, she'd been a broke delivery driver living paycheck to paycheck. Now she was in some kind of secret facility, having just helped a crime lord or businessman or whatever Kazuo actually was escape assassination. Her old life was gone. She couldn't go back to her apartment, couldn't go back to her job. Everything had changed in one night. She should be terrified. Part of her was. But another part felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. The shower was hot and endless. Zara stayed under the water until her skin turned pink, washing away blood and rain and fear. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything she owned, she found someone had taken her wet clothes and left a note. Mr. Rinnan requests your presence. Room 307. Take your time. Zara got dressed in the new clothes. They fit perfectly. She ate some of the soup, suddenly ravenous. Then she made her way to room 307. It was a hospital room, but like everything else in this place, it was nicer than what most people got. Kazuo was in bed, hooked up to monitors and 4 lines, but he was awake and sitting up. The babies were in clear hospital bassinets next to his bed, both sleeping peacefully. A nurse stood nearby, monitoring everything. Kazuo saw Zara and dismissed the nurse with a gesture. When they were alone, he looked at her for a long moment. His face was still pale, but his eyes were clear and focused. "You kept your promise," he said finally. "You did not let them take my children. You risked your life for strangers. Why?" Zara thought about how to answer. She could give him the easy response because it was the right thing to do, because she couldn't walk away. But that wasn't quite the whole truth. 2 years ago, my parents died in a fire, she said. I was supposed to become a paramedic. I was good at it. But after they died, I couldn't handle it anymore. Every patient reminded me of them. Every emergency felt like I was back in that moment, helpless and useless. So I quit. I gave up. She moved closer to the bassinets, looking down at Mika and Ran. Tonight, when I heard those babies crying, I had a choice. I could walk away like I'd been walking away from everything for 2 years. Or I could step up and be the person I used to be. The person my parents thought I was. And which did you choose? I think you know. Zara looked up at him. I'm not going to apologize for saving you. Any of you. Even if it means my life is completely upside down now. Kazuo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I was not always a good man. My wife Sayuri, she tried to make me better. She believed I could be someone worthy of our children. When she died in childbirth, I thought I would lose that chance. Her family wanted to take Mika and Rin, raise them in their world of violence and power. I refused. I wanted to give my children the life Sayuri dreamed of. A life away from all of this. But they wouldn't let you go. No. They saw my children as assets, as leverage, as the future of their empire. His hands clenched into fists. I will not allow it. I will die before I let them turn my children into weapons. You almost did die. Zara couldn't help the edge in her voice. That wound was serious. If you'd been alone much longer. But I was not alone. You found me. Or perhaps fate found you. Kazuo looked directly at her. I owe you a debt, Zara Milton. A debt I can never truly repay. But I can offer you protection. A new life. A purpose if you want it. What kind of purpose? My children need someone they can trust. Someone who will protect them the way you protected them tonight. Their mother is gone. I have wealth and resources, but what I need most is someone who cares about Mika and Ren as people, not as possessions. He paused. I am offering you a position. As their guardian, their protector. And perhaps, if you are willing, you could also use your medical skills to help others in my organization who cannot go to hospitals for various reasons. Zara's mind raced. He was offering her everything she'd lost. Purpose, skills, a reason to get up in the morning. But he was also offering her a life on the edge of legality. Protection in exchange for loyalty to a man she barely knew. Don't go anywhere. The ending is going to blow your mind. And if you've made it this far, drop a comment with "still watching from" your location. Let's see how global our audience is. What exactly is your organization? Zara asked. Earlier you said you're a businessman, but businessmen don't usually have tactical extraction teams and secret medical facilities. Kazuo smiled slightly. I import and export goods. Some of those goods exist in gray areas of legality. I employ people who have been rejected by traditional society. Immigrants without papers, people with criminal records who deserve second chances, those who have nowhere else to go. I give them work, protection, and purpose. In exchange, they give me loyalty. So you're not exactly legal, but you're not exactly a crime lord either. I prefer to think of myself as someone who operates in the spaces between. The law is not always just Zara. Sometimes people need help that the system cannot provide. He gestured at himself. Case in point. If I had gone to a hospital tonight, they would have called the police. The police would have called social services. My children would have been taken for their safety and handed directly to the family that tried to kill me. The law would have destroyed everything I fought to protect. Zara understood that better than she wanted to admit. The system hadn't saved her parents. The system hadn't given her a second chance when she dropped out of school. Sometimes the system failed people and they had to find other ways to survive. If I say yes, she said slowly, what does that actually mean? What would my life look like? You would live here in this facility with my children. You would care for them, protect them, help them grow. You would also train with my security team, basic self-defense, weapons, tactical medicine. And when needed, you would provide medical care to my people. Kazuo's expression became serious. It would not be an easy life. There would be danger. But you would be compensated well, you would have resources, and most importantly, you would matter. Your skills would save lives every day. And if I say no, then I will ensure you have enough money to relocate somewhere safe, start over, build a new life. I will have people watch over you to make sure Sayuri's family does not find you. But you would be alone again. Free but alone. Zara looked at the babies sleeping peacefully in their bassinets. Mika's tiny hand was curled into a fist. Ren's chest rose and fell with each breath. They had no idea how much danger they'd been in tonight. No idea that their lives had hung in the balance while Zara pulled a bullet from their father's side in a cramped apartment during a storm. She thought about going back to being alone. Getting another apartment, another job. Another life that felt empty and pointless. Or she could stay here. She could be part of something, even if that something existed in moral gray areas. I need to know one thing, Zara said. Do you hurt innocent people? Your business, your operations, do they cause harm to people who don't deserve it? Kazuo met her eyes. I cannot promise I am a good man. But I can promise that I do not target the innocent. My conflicts are with other organizations, with people who have chosen this life. I do not sell drugs to children or traffic human beings or engage in random violence. I have lines I will not cross, and those lines are drawn around people like you. People trying to live honest lives. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was an honest one. Okay, Zara said. I'll stay. But I have conditions. Name them. 1. I make my own medical decisions. If someone needs a hospital, I get to say so, and you don't stop me. 2. I'm not a soldier. I'll learn to defend myself and the babies, but I'm not going out on operations or whatever you call them. 3. If I ever feel like you're crossing those lines you mentioned, I get to walk away. No questions, no threats, just clean separation. Kazuo considered this. Then he nodded. Agreed. Do you have a 4th condition? People usually have 4. Yeah. Zara smiled slightly. You recover fully and don't do anything stupid like getting shot again. Because I'm not pulling any more bullets out of people at midnight in terrible conditions. Next time you use the actual medical facility. Deal. Kazuo extended his hand, and Zara shook it. His grip was weak but warm. Welcome to our family, Zara Milton. Such as it is. The next few days passed in a blur. Kazuo's recovery was faster than it should have been. Probably due to the high-quality medical care and his own stubborn determination. Zara spent her time learning the facility's layout, meeting the staff, and most importantly, caring for Mika and Ran. The babies were easier than she'd expected. They had clearly been well cared for before the attack. Kazuo had been a devoted father even while running his organization. Mika was the calm one, content to lie in her bassinet and observe the world with those serious dark eyes. Ran was more sensitive, quicker to fuss, but he also laughed more readily when Zara made funny faces at him. The tactical team leader, whose name turned out to be Akane, started training Zara on the 3rd day. Just basics at first. How to hold a gun, how to assess a threat, how to move with a child in a carrier while maintaining awareness of her surroundings. It was exhausting and occasionally terrifying, but it was also empowering in a way Zara hadn't expected. On the 5th day, Kazuo was cleared to leave his hospital room. He moved into a suite on the same floor as Zara's room, and for the first time they had a chance to really talk without the urgency of survival driving them. Tell me about your parents, Kazuo said one evening. They were in his suite's living area. Mika and Ren were on a play mat between them, doing the weird jerky movements that 3-month-olds did when they were trying to figure out their own limbs. Zara told him about her mother, who had been a teacher and loved books more than almost anything. About her father, who had been a mechanic and could fix anything with an engine. About how they died when an electrical fire swept through their apartment building. How the smoke detectors had been disconnected by the landlord. How by the time anyone noticed, it was too late. I tried to get back into school after, Zara said. Tried to push through. But every time I walked into the emergency room for clinical rotations, all I could think about was them. About how the paramedics who responded to the fire couldn't save them. About how maybe if I'd been there, if I'd known more, if I'd been faster. You blame yourself. Logically, I know it wasn't my fault. I wasn't even in the city when it happened. But emotionally, Zara shrugged. Grief isn't logical. No, Kazuo agreed quietly. It is not. When Sayuri died, I blamed everyone. The doctors, the nurses, God, fate. Mostly I blamed myself. She went into labor early. There were complications. I was in a meeting handling a crisis with a shipment. By the time I got to the hospital, she was already unconscious. She never got to hold our children. Never got to hear their first cries. They sat in silence for a moment. Two people bound together by loss and chance and one chaotic night in a storm. She would have liked you, Kazuo said finally. Sayuri. She believed in helping people, in choosing compassion over convenience. You remind me of her. I'm not sure that's a compliment. I'm kind of a mess. She was a mess too sometimes, but she was also the strongest person I ever met. Kazuo picked up Ran, who had started to fuss. She made me want to be better. And now for my children I must be better. Even when it is difficult. Zara watched him with his son. The feared businessman, the man with tactical teams and secret facilities, gently bouncing a fussy baby and making silly cooing sounds. It was such a contrast to the person he must be in his professional life that it was almost funny. Can I ask you something? Zara said. Why didn't you have more security with you that night? If Sayuri's family was such a threat, why were you driving yourself with just the babies? Kazuo's expression darkened. I had security. 4 men in 2 vehicles. They were supposed to escort us to the airport. He paused. One of them betrayed me. Told Sayuri's family our route. In the attack, my men were killed. The traitor, he shot my driver first. We crashed. I managed to get the children out, but I was injured. I knew more attackers would come, so I ran. I carried Mika and Ren as far as I could and hid them in that shipping container, hoping someone would find them before I bled out. That's when I showed up. That is when you showed up. A delivery driver looking for a restaurant that does not exist. Kazuo shook his head. Fate has a strange sense of humor. Over the following weeks, Zara settled into her new life. She developed a routine with the babies. Feeding, changing, tummy time, the basics of infant care. But she also trained with Akane, learning skills she never thought she'd need. How to identify threats. How to plan escape routes. How to perform emergency medicine with limited supplies. She also met more of Kazuo's organization. They were a diverse group. Immigrants from a dozen countries, people with complicated pasts, individuals who had been chewed up and spit out by traditional society. A former gang member who now ran security. A refugee who managed logistics. A disgraced doctor who couldn't practice legally anymore, but could still save lives. They all treated Kazuo with respect bordering on reverence, but they treated his children with genuine love. Mika and Ren were passed around like treasures, doted on by people who understood that these babies represented hope for a better future. 1 month after the storm, Akane approached Zara during a training session. We've located the traitor, she said without preamble. The one who told Sayuri's family where to find Mr. Rinnan. He's being held at one of our facilities. Mr. Rinnan wants to know if you would like to be present when he questions him. Zara's first instinct was to say no. She didn't want to be involved in whatever questioning meant in this context. But then she thought about that night, about how close they'd all come to dying, and she found herself saying, yes, I want to hear why he did it. The questioning took place in a basement room that was deliberately designed to be intimidating. The traitor, a man named Tanaka, was tied to a chair, looking defiant despite his obvious fear. Kazuo entered with Zara beside him, and Tanaka's defiance wavered when he saw them. You, Tanaka said, staring at Zara. You're the one from that night. The delivery driver. I saw the security footage from your building. You tried to kill children, Zara said flatly. That's all I need to know about you. Kazuo held up a hand, stopping whatever Tanaka was about to say. I am not here for your excuses. I am here to understand. You worked for me for 3 years. I paid you well. I protected your family. Why betray me? Tanaka's face twisted. Because you betrayed what we were supposed to be. Sayuri's family, they remember the old ways. Power, respect, fear. But you, after she died, you went soft. Talking about legitimate businesses. About providing for people instead of taking from them. You were destroying everything. So you decided to murder me and my infant children. I decided to restore order. Sayuri's family promised to make the organization strong again. They promised. They promised you power you had not earned. Kazuo's voice was ice cold. And in exchange, you gave them my children. You would have made Mika and Ren into weapons, tools, the very thing Sayuri fought against. Tanaka said nothing. What could he say? Kazuo turned to Zara. This is the world I inhabit. A world where loyalty is currency and betrayal is common. Are you certain you wish to remain here? To raise my children in this? Zara looked at Tanaka, then at Kazuo. This man made his choices. But you're making different choices. You're trying to build something better. That's what matters. Kazuo nodded slowly. Then he turned back to Tanaka. You will be taken far from here and released. You will never work in this city again. If you ever come near my family, if you ever speak my name or my children's names, you will not receive a second warning. Do you understand? Tanaka looked shocked. You're letting me live? My wife believed in mercy. In second chances. I am trying to honor her memory. Kazuo's eyes were hard. Do not make me regret this mercy. They left Tanaka there to be processed and removed from their lives. In the hallway, Zara said. That was the right choice. The merciful choice. Was it? Kazuo sounded tired. Sometimes I wonder if mercy is just weakness in disguise. No. Mercy is strength. It's choosing to be better when you could easily be worse. Zara thought about her parents, about the lessons they'd taught her. Your children are going to grow up seeing how you handle people. Mika and Ren will learn from your actions. Do you want them to learn that problems are solved with violence? Or that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away? Kazuo was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. Sayuri would have said something very similar. You really do remind me of her. 3 months after the storm, Zara was giving Mika a bottle when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, local area code. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello. Zara Milton? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. This is Dr. Patricia Chun from Philadelphia General Hospital. I'm calling because your former advisor, Dr. Reeves, gave me your number. We have an opening in our emergency medicine residency program, and your application is still on file. Dr. Reeves says you were one of her best students before you withdrew. We'd like to discuss the possibility of you returning to complete your training. Zara's heart stopped. The hospital. Her old dream. Everything she'd given up. I appreciate the call, Zara said carefully, but I'm not available right now. My circumstances have changed. I understand you experienced a significant loss, Dr. Reeves explained, but we believe you have real talent, and we'd hate to see it go to waste. Would you at least be willing to come in for an interview? No commitment, just a conversation. Zara looked at Mika, content in her arms. Through the window, she could see Kazuo walking with Ren in the garden, pointing out birds and flowers to a baby too young to understand but old enough to enjoy the attention. This was her life now. These were her people. Thank you, Zara said. But I'm exactly where I need to be. She hung up and returned her attention to Mika, who had finished her bottle and was doing that thing where babies try to focus on your face from 3 inches away. You're going to grow up strong, Zara whispered. Both of you. And I'm going to make sure you have choices I never had. You're going to know you're loved, you're going to know you're safe, and you're never going to wonder if someone will fight for you. Because I will. Every single time. Mika made a small cooing sound and Zara smiled. 6 months ago, she'd been broke, directionless, and convinced her life had peaked at 25. Now she was a guardian, a protector, and something close to family for 2 children who needed her as much as she needed them. The door opened and Kazuo entered with Ron. There is something I need to discuss with you, he said, settling into the chair across from her. Sayuri's family has made contact. They wish to negotiate. Zara's arms tightened protectively around Mika. Negotiate what? A truce. They claim they were misled by rogue elements, by Tanaka and his associates. They say they never intended for harm to come to the children, only to me. Kazuo's expression was skeptical. They wished to see Mika and Ren, to establish a relationship as their grandparents. After they tried to kill all of you? Family is complicated in my culture. Blood ties are considered sacred, even when those ties are stained with violence. He looked down at Ren, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder. Part of me wants to refuse, to keep them away from my children forever. But another part wonders if I am denying Mika and Ren something important, a connection to their mother's heritage. Zara thought about her own parents, about how she'd give anything for one more conversation, one more piece of advice. But she also thought about the bullets that had torn through Kazuo's side, about the men who'd chased them through the storm with guns drawn. What did Sayuri want? She asked. When she was alive, what did she say about her family? Kazuo was quiet for a long moment. She loved them, but she feared what they would do to our children. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would keep Mika and Rin away from the family business, away from the violence and manipulation that defined her childhood. He met Zara's eyes. She made me promise they would be free. Then that's your answer. You honor her wishes. You keep the children safe. If her family wants a relationship, they can earn it over time. But not now. Not when the wounds are still fresh and trust hasn't been established. They will not like this answer. I don't care if they like it. They don't get to terrorize you and then demand access to your kids because of bloodlines. Zara's voice was fierce. You're their father. You make the decisions. And I'll back whatever you decide. Kazuo looked at her with something like wonder. You have become very protective of my children. Our children, Zara corrected, then blushed. I mean, legally they're yours, obviously. But in every way that matters. In every way that matters, you are their guardian. Their protector. Their family. Kazuo reached over and squeezed her hand. Thank you, Zara. For everything. For that night and every day since. The meeting with Sayuri's family took place 2 weeks later, in a neutral location, a private dining room at an upscale restaurant. Kazuo insisted Zara come with him, leaving the babies with Akane and a full security detail at the facility. You are part of this family now, he'd said, which means you should be part of these decisions. Sayuri's parents were exactly what Zara expected. Elegant, cold, and radiating barely concealed disdain for everything around them. Her father, Takashi, was in his 60s, with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. Her mother, Yuki, was younger, beautiful in an ice sculpture sort of way, and her eyes never stopped calculating. So this is the woman, Yuki said in English, looking Zara up and down. The delivery driver who thinks she can be a mother to our grandchildren. I don't think I can be, Zara said calmly. I am. Someone has to be, since you tried to make them orphans. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Takashi's hand tightened on his cane. But Kazuo smiled slightly, and Zara realized he brought her specifically for this. To be the one who could say the things he couldn't without starting a war. There were misunderstandings, Takashi said stiffly. Rogue elements within our organization acted without authorization. Those responsible have been dealt with. Tanaka said you promised him power, Kazuo said. He said you wanted to restore the old ways. That does not sound like rogue elements. That sounds like policy. Yuki leaned forward. Our daughter died bringing your children into this world. We have a right to know them, to be part of their lives. You have the right you earn, Zara cut in. And so far, you've earned exactly nothing except a restraining order. You dare, Takashi started, but Kazuo raised a hand. Zara speaks for me in this matter. She was there the night your people attacked. She pulled a bullet from my body while your assassins hunted us through the storm. She has more right to speak about my children's safety than anyone in this room except me. The family meeting continued for another hour, tense and uncomfortable. In the end, an agreement was reached. Supervised visits starting in 6 months, with the understanding that any hint of manipulation or danger would end the arrangement permanently. It wasn't what Sayuri's family wanted, but it was what Kazuo was willing to offer. As they left the restaurant, Zara felt drained. Is it always going to be like this? Walking on knives, negotiating with people who tried to kill you? I hope not, Kazuo said. But I cannot promise it will get easier. This life, the one I have built, it comes with complications. If you wish to leave. Stop offering me exits, Zara interrupted. I'm not looking for the door. I'm just trying to understand the house I'm living in. Kazuo studied her. You have changed since that night. You are stronger. More confident. I had to be. 2 babies and a stubborn businessman don't leave much room for self-doubt. Zara smiled. Besides, someone has to keep you from doing something stupid like meeting with your homicidal in-laws alone. Ex-in-laws. Sayuri is gone. They are simply grandparents now. Dangerous, manipulative grandparents, but that is all. They drove back to the facility in comfortable silence. When they arrived, Akane met them at the door with a concerned expression. We have a situation. Nothing urgent, but you should know. Mika has been running a fever for the past hour. 101.3. We've been monitoring it and Ren seems fine. Zara was moving before Akane finished speaking. She found Mika in the nursery, flushed and fussy in her crib. The baby's forehead was hot to the touch, and her breathing was slightly rapid. Zara did a quick assessment. Ears clear, throat looked normal, no rash, no other symptoms except the fever and general crankiness. Probably just a virus, Zara said, scooping up the baby. But we should monitor her closely. Fevers in babies this young can escalate quickly. She spent the next 6 hours with Mika, checking her temperature every 30 minutes, keeping her hydrated, watching for any signs that this was more than a simple bug. Kazuo stayed with her, pacing, anxious in a way she'd never seen him. She is so small, he murmured at one point. So fragile. When Sayuri died, the doctors said sometimes these things happen. Complications that no one could predict. What if this is like that? What if? It's not, Zara said firmly. It's a fever. Babies get fevers. Her temperature is coming down, see? 100.8 now. She's going to be fine. How do you know? Because I'm good at this. Because I spent 3 years learning how to read bodies and vital signs and symptoms. Because this is what I was meant to do. Zara looked up at him. Trust me. I've got her. And she did. By morning, Mika's fever had broken completely. She woke up her normal self, ready to eat and play and observe the world. With those serious eyes, Kazuo collapsed in relief and Zara realized something. This man who commanded criminal organizations and faced death threats with calm calculation was completely undone by the idea of losing his children. You're a good father, she told him. Sayuri would be proud of you. I try. Every day, I try to be worthy of her faith in me. Worthy of these children she gave her life to bring into the world. He looked at Mika, then at Zara. And I try to be worthy of your faith as well. You chose to stay when you could have left. That means something to me. The months passed. Mika and Ren grew, hit their milestones, started to develop distinct personalities. Mika was the observer, content to watch and process. Ren was the explorer, always reaching for things, always trying to move. Zara documented everything, took endless photos, and slowly built a life she'd never expected to have. She also continued her medical work. Word spread through Kazuo's organization that there was a skilled medic who asked no questions and kept no records. People started showing up at the facility. A warehouse worker with a deep cut that needed stitches, a driver who'd been in an accident and couldn't risk a hospital visit, a pregnant woman without insurance who needed prenatal care. Zara treated them all. She set up a proper medical room, fully stocked, and established protocols. She trained some of Kazuo's people in basic first aid. She saved lives just like she'd always wanted to, even if it wasn't in the way she'd imagined. 1 year after the storm, Kazuo called Zara into his office. It was rare for him to be formal with her anymore. They'd fallen into an easy partnership, co-parenting the twins and running their unconventional household. But today he was behind his desk, looking serious. I have been thinking about the future, he said. About what happens to Mika and Ren if something happens to me. I have enemies, Zara. Rivals. The risks I take. They are real. Don't talk like that. I must. Because I need to know they will be protected. He pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. I have had my lawyers draw up paperwork. Guardianship papers. If anything happens to me, you will have full legal custody of my children. No one can challenge it. Not Sayuri's family, not my business partners, no one. Zara stared at the papers. Kazuo, this is... Necessary. You love them. You protect them. You are their mother in every way except biology. His voice was steady but his eyes were vulnerable. Will you accept this responsibility? Zara thought about that night in the storm, when she'd heard babies crying and made the choice to investigate instead of driving away. How that one choice had led her here, to this moment, to this family she'd somehow built from chaos and chance. Yes, she said. Of course. Yes. She signed the papers and just like that she became more than a guardian. She became a mother. If you're still here after this emotional roller coaster, you're amazing. Drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment with where you're watching from and what you think happens next. Part 2 is coming soon. The twins' first birthday was a small affair, just the core members of their household and a few trusted associates. Zara baked a cake herself, slightly lopsided but made with love. Mika and Run dove into it with the enthusiasm of one-year-olds discovering sugar for the first time. And the photos Zara took captured pure joy. Sayuri would have loved this, Kazuo said, watching his children with frosting in their hair and on their faces. She always said birthdays should be chaotic and messy and full of laughter. Then we're doing it right, Zara said, wiping frosting off Ren's eyebrow. Next year we'll probably have to deal with tiny terrorists who can walk. This is just the beginning. Life settled into a new normal. The threats from Sayuri's family diminished after the supervised visits proved that Kazuo was serious about boundaries. Some of his business rivals tried to test him, but Akane's security team was too good, and Kazuo's reputation for mercy backed by absolute force when necessary kept most problems at bay. Zara found herself thinking less about the life she'd left behind and more about the life she was building. She still had moments of grief for her parents, still wondered sometimes what they would think of her choices. But mostly she felt like she'd found her place. 2 years after the storm, on a night remarkably similar to that first night, rain hammering the windows, wind howling, Kazuo found Zara in the nursery. The twins were long since in proper beds now, sleeping peacefully despite the weather. Zara was just watching them like she sometimes did, still amazed that these children were hers to protect. Do you ever regret it? Kazuo asked quietly. That night in the storm? Sometimes I wonder if you would have chosen differently if you'd known where it would lead. Zara thought about her tiny apartment, her delivery job, her empty life. Then she looked at Mika and Ren, at the family she'd found in the most unlikely circumstances. Not for a second, she said. That storm brought me home. I just didn't know it at the time. Kazuo moved to stand beside her. They'd been through so much together. Danger, fear, grief, joy, and the daily chaos of raising twins. They'd become partners in every sense of the word, bound together by love for 2 children and mutual respect that had grown into something deeper. I need to tell you something, Kazuo said. Something I have been afraid to say. Zara's heart started beating faster. What? I have fallen in love with you. The words came out in a rush like he'd been holding them back for too long. Not because you saved my life or because you care for my children, but because of who you are. Your strength, your compassion, your fierce protection of the people you love. I know this is complicated. I know Sayuri has not been gone long. But I needed you to know. Zara turned to face him fully. She'd been aware of her own feelings for months now, pushing them down because the timing seemed wrong, because she didn't want to complicate their partnership, because she was afraid. But standing here in the dark with the storm raging outside and the twins sleeping peacefully, she realized that life was too short and too precious to waste time being afraid of good things. I love you too, she said simply. I think I have for a while now. I just didn't know if you were ready to hear it. Kazuo cupped her face in his hands. Sayuri once told me that if something happened to her, she hoped I would find love again. She said life was too beautiful to spend it alone, and that our children deserved to see what healthy love looked like. He smiled, tears in his eyes. She would have liked you very much. They kissed, gentle and tentative at first, then deeper. It felt right in a way Zara hadn't expected. Not a betrayal of Sayuri's memory, but an honoring of it. A continuation of the love and hope she'd wanted for her family. Over the next year, their relationship deepened. They were careful around the twins, not wanting to confuse them, but Mika and Ran seemed to understand in the way children do that the adults in their lives were happy. They called Zara Mama and Kazuo Papa, and knew nothing but love and security. Zara continued her medical work, But she also started teaching. She set up training programs for Kazuo's people, teaching them emergency response and basic healthcare. She became known in their community as someone who could be trusted, someone who saved lives without judgment. Kazuo worked on transitioning more of his business into legitimate channels. It was slow work. You couldn't just flip a switch and make gray market operations legal, but he was trying. For his children. For Sayuri's memory. For Zara. 3 years after the storm, on a quiet evening when the twins were with Akane at the park, Kazuo asked Zara to marry him. It wasn't a grand gesture. Just the two of them in the garden, surrounded by flowers Sayuri had planted before she died. "I know this is unconventional," he said, holding a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "I know our life is complicated and sometimes dangerous, but I want you to be my wife. I want us to be a real family legally and officially. Will you marry me?" Zara didn't hesitate. "Yes. Absolutely yes." They got married a month later, small ceremony, just family and close friends. Mika and Ren were ring bearers, tottering down the aisle in matching outfits, stealing the show completely. Zara wore a simple dress and flowers in her hair, and Kazuo couldn't stop smiling the entire day. That night, after the celebration was over and the twins were in bed, Zara and Kazuo stood in the same garden where he'd proposed. The sky was clear, full of stars, nothing like that stormy night 3 years ago when everything had changed. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Zara asked. "If I just left the delivery at the warehouse and driven away? If I hadn't heard the babies crying?" "Every day," Kazuo admitted. "I think about how I would have died in that container. How Mika and Ren would have been found by someone else or perhaps not found at all. How my entire world hinged on you choosing to investigate a strange sound in a storm. Fate," Zara said softly. "Or chance. Or luck. Whatever it was, I am grateful for it." He pulled her close. "You saved my life that night. But you have given me so much more than life. You have given me purpose, hope, and a future worth fighting for." They stood there together, two people who had found each other in the darkest moment and built something beautiful from it. In the house behind them, 2 children slept peacefully, loved and protected. Around them, a community thrived, built on second chances and redemption. The storm that night had brought them together, but it was their choices to help, to stay, to love, to fight for something better that had made them a family. And as Zara looked up at the stars, she knew with absolute certainty that she would make the same choices again. Every single time. Because some deliveries change your route. Some storms bring you home. And some nights when you hear someone crying in the dark, you run toward the sound instead of away from it, and that makes all the difference. Thanks for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our daily uploads. We post new emotional stories every single day, and your support means everything to us. Drop a comment below telling us, where are you watching from? What was your favorite moment in the story? Should we do a part 2 showing Mika and Ren growing up? Your comments and engagement help us create more content like this. Share this video with someone who loves emotional storytelling, and let's build this community together. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best things in life come from the choices we make in our darkest moments. Choose kindness. Choose courage. Choose love. See you in the next story.